Welcome to this pointless point of sale video where we cover the ZPL programming language. ZPL is a very standardized way of making sure your labels print out exactly as you expect. ZPL works for any printer that supports the ZPL language. If you intend to use this guide with your label printer, make sure it's a ZPL capable printer. We're using a ZPL emulator so that we can see what a print job would look like without having a printer right in front of you. Here we have a sophisticated label. I'm going to show you what the ZPL text looks like. Now, if you have the ZPL designer software, you can create labels like this here. It creates a template for you that looks like this, and then you use that template to print out the label. The same thing happens with Pointless, where as I select this, you'd see an example of a label, and that's using the same set of tools. We have this complex text here that converts into something very readable. The nice thing is that you can put in fields and values that depend on the product or transaction itself. Under Settings, and then under Print Settings, we have a section for label templates. You can have many different templates, and they can apply to different types of items or different situations. You might print a label at the transaction to affix to an item that you're selling that requires batch information, legal information. It could be for cannabis. Or you could print out a label if you do buy and sell used clothing that would print out that you'd affix to the clothes when you put it up on the rack. You could print out a label for a music album, or a shelf label for a grocery, retail, or liquor store. You could also print a label if you are in a deli where you need to print out meat that you're pre-packaging or packaging right at the time for the customer for them to take up and purchase. There's many examples of when you could print out a label. To design the label, you would select the label you want to work on. You would press Edit. And here you would have this text. Now, we don't recommend you actually write out by hand these codes. Nobody's going to do that. What you would do is you would use a designer. The link here gives you a link. If you're in the app, it's going to show up in an app window. You can also go to ZPL Designer and download software that would allow you to set up the label in the way that you want. It allows you to type in normal information. It assists you in designing the label and then outputting the complex code that you would need to use. To get information from your product or the transaction onto the label itself without having to know that name ahead of time, you would refer to our documentation guide that has variable fields that you would type into your label. In this case here, we have money, bracket, item, dot, product name. That puts the product name in the place on the label that you want. Same thing with SKU and a number of other fields you can use by referencing our documentation guide. You can print labels from inventory by selecting the item, by selecting the label type, and inputting the print quantity. Sometimes you need to print a label during a transaction, like if you're printing out a tag to affix to clothing, if you're printing out a label to affix to food or prepackaged products. You can predetermine labels that would print out on the transaction from catalog, from types, from item type settings. You would then locate the item type. If you are in a deli and you're packaging fish, you would scroll down to the label type and you would select the type of label that would work for the packaging of the fish. Then it's important to make sure your device has the correct label printer assigned to it. You can go to device info from the user button here and we see the label printer is set to ZPL printer, and that's the name of the Windows ZPL printer that we have assigned. If you wanted to assign a label printer to any other computer on your network, under settings you would have terminals. Then you can get the same window for each one of those terminals and input the correct printer for them. When you have an order open and you want to print a label, you would select the 3 dots, press print label, and the label would come out of the printer. You would then have a notification here of a red printer indicating that the item has printed once. Once you print a label, you can no longer delete the item. You would have to have a manager approval to void the item. Over in inventory, we can select an item and we can assign any label we want from the template. We can then press SKU and it would print out the label that fits that template. Here at the catalog, instead of inventory where we have been, I've now selected an item. It doesn't show up quite properly, but we have a product template that I've added. And here we can now see that it will show the product properly when I go to print the SKU. It shows up well formatted and it fits the product template rather than the inventory template. If we went over to settings, we would see that we have an additional template, the product, and also the ZPL template. To make this template, I copied the previous template, then I copied this information, I pasted it into Labelary, I adjusted the fields, then I hit redraw, which shows us the difference. Then I copied the text, put the text back into the section, saved it. Then in catalog, we could now use the product template. If you have any questions, give us a call at 866-973-8099. Leave an email at support@pointlesspos.com or leave a comment below. We look forward to hearing from you.